Affairs 1998 to 2003 and a former ambassador of Sri Lanka to the United States 1995 to 97 and to the UN office in Geneva 1984 to 87. He is currently the 11th president of the Nobel Peace Prize winning Hogwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs and deputy chairman of the governing body of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and on several other advisory boards of international bodies. As a Sri Lankan diplomat, Dr. Dhanapala served in London, Beijing, Washington DC, New Delhi, and Geneva, and represented Sri Lanka at several international conferences, chairing many of them, including the historic NPT Review and Extension Conference in 1995. He was director of the UN Institute for Disarmament Research, UNIDR, from 1987 to 1992. Dr. Dhanapala has received many international awards and honorary doctorates, has published 5 books and several articles in international journals, and lectured widely. He speaks Sinhala, English, Chinese, and French. He is married and has a daughter and a son. He was at the University of Peradeniya from 1957 to 1961. Few decades later, he was awarded the honorary doctorate by this university in 2000. Jayantha, you may have been addressed as Your Honor, His Excellency in all these occasions, but for us, you are our alumni and our beloved friend Jayantha. Ladies and gentlemen, towards the late 2012, an unassuming gentleman walked into my office and he said he has embarked upon a great project which has more or less come to an end, but for him to make it a reality, he needed the support of the university. I asked him to sit and asked what it is. The person is Mr. Alves, Senior Assistant Registrar, now retired from Peradeniya University. And his project is compiling all the documents that led to the founding of this university. At that point, the thought occurred to that he is also indirectly telling that Peradeniya University need to publish this. So we got the manuscript, passed it on to another gentleman, a former librarian, Mr. NTSA Senadira, who kindly went through that and indicated that it is of highest quality to be published. Then I talked to the Vice Chancellor and said that a tradition, one of the great university traditions around the world is to have their own press. Our university did have one at one point, but somehow or other it has gone disarray. So Vice Chancellor requested we should re-establish Peradeniya University Press, and publishing Mr. Alves' compilation, Peradeniya, the founding of a university, should be the very first one. Ladies and gentlemen, both have become a reality. We have re-established the university press and we publish this great compendium, Peradeniya, the founding of a university. Let me invite Mr. Alves for a brief statement on the background for this work.
Dear distinguished guests and friends, I am very pleased with this opportunity where I am able to make few remarks on the occasion of the launching of the book, The Peradeniya, the founding of a university, which is compiled by me. The 5 volumes in this compilation spans across the history of the conceptual beginnings of the establishment of Peradeniya as a university, as well as its actual physical establishment covering a period of over 50 years leading up to 1954. Having been a student of this very university for 4 years, and proceeding with a career of 40 years as a senior library administrator, I finally gained confidence to undertake this mammoth task of writing the story of this university in 2010. I did this work on my own initiative without any financial support, and I am indeed very happy to announce that I had a free hand in both planning and selecting the material pertaining to the history of this university. It was my brainchild, and today it became my project. Tomorrow, it will be a gift to new generations who steps into this university. My task has by no means easy. For one thing, the records were not as complete as one would have wished. For another, collecting the necessary material from various archives such as minutes of meetings of university bodies, Hansard reports, annual reports, convocation addresses, university calendars, memorandums, reports of committees, and files of correspondence was more complicated than I initially expected. All this scattered material had to be collected within the interval of my busy official life. However, I managed to sift through the enormous amount of data which I had previously collected within 2 years. Typing of this work, which could not be done at a stretch, had to be spread over a period of 2 years. The selection of material and typing involves my own labor. Therefore, the responsibility for all errors, omissions, and inclusions becomes my very own. In 2012, soon after finishing this first draft of this work in 5 volumes, I met Professor Shantha Hennayaka, the Deputy Vice Chancellor in his office, and brought this work to his attention. In spite of his busy schedule, he vehemently read through the portions of this manuscript and took the initiative to print it to the University Publication Committee. Professor Hennayaka offered his constant encouragement and valuable advice throughout his publication process to get this work published using the university finances. In this aspect, I am unable to find words adequate enough to express my gratitude to him. I wish to thank Professor Atula Senaratne, the Vice Chancellor, for accepting this work for publication and providing constant support to this work. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who were involved in this project, including my family, staff of the library, and colleagues, and other members of the academic staff for their constant and enduring support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alvis, first for compiling this compendium, and second, being with us today under very trying conditions personally. We appreciate both. Now, let us hear about this compendium from our former librarian, Mr. NTSA Senadira, who also wrote an introduction to this volume. Mr. Senadira, over to you.
Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor, invited guests, former Vice Chancellors, former registrars, all academic staff members, non-academic staff members, and students. I have been asked to review Mr. Alvis's publication, taking half an hour. But I think half an hour is really too much because now you are rather tired after listening to 4 speeches. But in fact, to do justice to what Mr. Alvis has done, half an hour is not sufficient. With the permission of the Deputy Vice Chancellor, I went through the 5 volumes after they were printed, and then I counted the number of pages in the 5 volumes, and I found the total number is 2,457. Now, what is this publication? Usually, the librarians are well known for compiling bibliographies. My predecessor, Mr. H.I. Gunathilaka, compiled a well-known bibliography on Ceylon. It is internationally recognized, and it is so well-known and became popular among readers mainly because of his very lucid annotations. But what Mr. Alvis has done is not compiling a bibliography, but selecting certain documents from our library and then arranging in some way that he has followed and presenting it to the readers. Now, what is the purpose of copying documents and presenting the documents to the readers? Usually now this is not something done in other places. But there is some need for it in our library, mainly because, if I may go into the details, right from the inception, our library has been developed not just as a university library, but as a national library which collects not only printed materials, but even palm leaf manuscripts, then various notes, memoranda, and all that kind of things which could be used by the researchers for their research in the university. Now, this policy has been followed right throughout. So, our library, in fact, is a national library for all practical purposes. Of course, a national library has now come up in Colombo, starting from 1971, but the real national library in this country is the University of Peradeniya Library, because it has a collection which reflects the nation that is Sri Lanka. But what Mr. Alvis has done is, out of this large pool of knowledge, he has just taken a handful relating to a specific subject. The specific subject is forming the first university of this country. His documents start from 1906. That's a remarkable year, because it is in that year that the Ceylon University Association was formed for the first time to bring into focus the need to establish a university in this country. The last point now he said is about 1954, but I went through the materials and I find that there are materials right up to about 1960. But the important last point is the time Sir Ivor Jennings left Sri Lanka in 1955. Now the documents that he has gathered belongs to a very crucial period in the formation of the first university of this country. Now, of course, we are at present, of course, the university's name, the original name, has changed 4 times, and now we are called the University of Peradeniya. First, it was the University of Ceylon in Colombo from 1942 to 1952, and then from 1952 to about 1965, it was the University of Ceylon Peradeniya, and later it became the University of Sri Lanka, Peradeniya campus. But finally now we have become the University of Peradeniya. But it is the same old university, but of course the name has changed. What is important here is, during this long period, the university administrators thought that the university library must be developed to such a level, a recognizable level, if the university is to perform properly. Right from the time of the first university administrator in this country, who was responsible for the university college established in 1921, is Mr. Maas, who was appointed in 1921 and continued up to 1938 as the first principal of the University College. Now, the University College prepared students for the London University examinations, mostly the first degree examinations, and the answer scripts were sent to England, and then the students got their results. Now, there is an interesting document. I think in this publication, this document has been reproduced. The document is, when Maas left, of course, the principal's post in the University College fell vacant, and there was a paper advertisement published locally as well as in foreign newspapers asking applicants to apply for the post of university principal. Jennings, who was then a senior lecturer in the London School of Economics at that time, saw the press advertisement and then decided to apply for this post. But there was a very interesting description about the university college at that time. It says, in the East, this is supposed to be the best university college, and its results are remarkable. And he says, in the subjects like botany, chemistry, the students coming from Ceylon are getting first classes in the London University examinations. So our students have been doing very well right from the time the university college was functioning. But Jennings, when interview was held in London, and of course he was asked to take over the job, and then of course the war broke out, and there were long delays in arranging a ship to come to Sri Lanka. And in his personal papers, we find what really happened. When he wanted to bring his family along with him, the Crown agent said the ship that is leaving doesn't take women, and therefore his wife cannot be taken. And the children also cannot be taken, only he can go. But when he came to the ship, he found there were women. And then he found these women were actually the wives of European planters. So he was wondering, now the European planter is considered more important than a man who is going to Sri Lanka, to Ceylon, to run its first higher educational institution. But anyway, when he came to Sri Lanka, he took the job very seriously. And he, immediately after coming to Sri Lanka, he made a courtesy call to see the Minister Kannangara. Of course, after the discussion, the new Vice Chancellor said, "Sir, I didn't waste my time in England when my ship was getting delayed, but of course during that time, whatever documents available on your institution, I have read in England. But if you are very keen to establish the university, I can tell you how to do it." But the minister was surprised, because he never thought that the new Vice Chancellor will have such a knowledge about what was happening in Sri Lanka, because I need not repeat what was happening, because we all know a decision to establish the university was taken long time ago, as far back as 1922. But of course, due to this battle of sites, this was dragging on for ages up to about 1938. Now everybody thought the university must be taken to the new location and the new university must start where the university is to be opened. But Jennings's feeling was different. He said, now the basic infrastructure for the university is already in Colombo. Let us establish the university in Colombo and shift the university to Peradeniya later on. It worked. And he said, Minister, Honorable Minister, if you really want to put a paper to the State Council, I can prepare the paper for you. And I think he made the courtesy call somewhere around on 23rd March 1941, and then he writes to the minister on 18th April 1941, indicating, giving a memorandum that should be put to the State Council and also giving reasons why he is submitting this memorandum. Now all these papers are in our library because his files were handed over to the library when he left the university in 1955. And along with these files, we also found an interesting book that he had written, The Kandy Road. What is Kandy Road? It is his description of the Kandy Road from Colombo to Kandy, giving details about how the road goes and what the important places are. Now his idea was to, he knew that the visitors coming to Kandy would like to see the Peradeniya University also on its way, and he thought if he could write this book and the copies could be sold to the visitors to establish a fund to beautify the Peradeniya campus. But unfortunately it didn't work out because he left in 1955, but in 1992 when we celebrated the 50th Golden Jubilee, this book was published by the library, edited by Mr. Gunathilaka. I am pleased to see the chairman of the Jubilee Committee, Professor Dasanayaka here now, and I think this committee planned Jubilee activities for 1 year, and a massive program was worked out. But I am grateful to the present Vice Chancellor and the Deputy Vice Chancellor for organizing this valuable ceremony to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the official opening of the university. Now, what is this official and unofficial opening? Now, the unofficial opening actually came in 1952 on 6th October 1952. The reason is all arrangements had been made to declare open the university in 1952 by King George VI. But he suddenly passed away, and then the university was informed the Queen should now, after the coronation, she has to come to Sri Lanka. It will take time. The least delay would be at least 2 years. So they said it will be somewhere in 1954 that the university has to be brought to Peradeniya. But the Vice Chancellor said, no, I have been waiting for such a long time from 1942 to come here. Now most of the basic buildings have been completed. I can't wait. And then without much ceremony, he brought the students of the arts faculty on 5th October 1952 by train. And the students started work here on 6th October. Of course, Jennings's diaries indicate very interesting episodes indicating how these 2 days went on. The rain, now we are also in October, the rain was constant. That night the lights went off, and of course the students didn't find sufficient bedding, and then of course the men students decided to give their beds to Sangamita Hall and all that kind of story. But what is most important here, I am trying to stress is, Jennings, although he came from England, he took his job very seriously and then saw that this university will rise up to a proper level. I think as Professor Pieris indicated, his intention was that the university, when it comes to the university architecture, now Professor Abercrombie was the university architect, and of course they decided to use our national architectural background embedded in the new buildings. And then we are told that mostly the Kandian period, architecture in the Kandian period has been used for the establishment, for the architectural decorations of this university. But it is not Kandian period that is involved. The entire period starting from Anuradhapura period right up to present day has been used in this work. But the most important thing is they have not just reproduced what was in Anuradhapura, what was in Polonnaruwa, what was in Kandy, but of course what has been reproduced is they have taken the themes and then they have mixed that theme along with the new architectural trends in England during that time, and then this remarkable university was established. Now, after so many years, the university has started functioning in 1952, and nearly half a century has now passed, or maybe even more than that, because we are celebrating 60th year. But still, this is the first and the best university in this country. To have a proper view about this university, we will have to have a printed set of materials relating to the subject. And I think Mr. Alves has done that job. My little worry is sometimes I am deviating from my main subject because most of the things that Mr. Alves represents are related to history. Now, in this